Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Racing. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my stupefative co-host, Chris Racing. Today, we've got Paul Rafelson with us of Seller Basics. Paul's an attorney that represents Amazon sellers, and his firm also handles things like IP complaints, product safety appeals, authenticity appeals, and account suspensions, and they do a bunch of other things too. I know that Paul's argued in court for Amazon sellers, and it is even open discussions with people in DC on behalf of sellers on numerous occasions. And our goal today is to learn a little bit more about how to keep our accounts safe and what to do when things go sideways. Plus, we've got a ton of questions from the audience. Paul, I appreciate you being here today, man.
Hey, I am so glad to be here. I appreciate it. I love talking about what's going on, and your community is a great community, and I'm just really happy to reconnect. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get started, you guys know the drill. We spend minutes getting ready for each one of these episodes. So if you find some value in this, do us a solid, pound the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. The best way for us to grow this pod is by getting you to interact and let us know you want to see more content like this. And of course, we'll keep showing up and doing it. But let's dive in because we've got a ton. So, Paul, I guess the first thing is what drew you to helping Amazon sellers and account health issues? And I guess kind of what's your backstory about getting into this space?
Well, it wasn't the money, believe it or not. It was not actually that. I had a really good life before I did this. I was a lawyer. I graduated law school. It'll be 20 years this May, which is scary. And I worked a little bit in private, but then I quickly got plucked out to go work in-house. I was at Microsoft. I was at Walmart. I was at General Electric. I got recruited. Like I kept kind of in this recruiting thing where like I would get comfortable. And then Walmart was convincing me that I needed to move to Arkansas and work there, and brought me out there. And after a couple of years at Microsoft, I said, yeah, you know what? This is a really cool thing. They're trying to rebuild a department. I went there. Literally the day I bought my house in Arkansas, I get a phone call from GE, and they're like, we need you to move here and be a part of our team. So, and when you're a lawyer and you work in-house, you get paid well. Your hours are just, 9 to 5 at best. Like, on summer, like we had Fridays off. But what happened was GE moved their headquarters to Boston. This is a project that I was on, and that's about when I walked away. And long story short is what I'm trying to get to is this all happened by accident. I wrote a blog post. The big topic was constitutional law and sales taxes for Amazon sellers. So we had a lobby about, we had to build a coalition to challenge that because a lot of these Amazon sellers were being improperly told it was their responsibility to pay these sales taxes by these states, and they were throwing words around like Nexus. So it started with like a blog post about taxes. And then as I learned more about the community, I realized there's so much to do here. There's really no lawyer or law firm designed to help this type of business, what I call the global small business, right? If you said global small business in the 1970s, that would sound stupid. It'd be like an oxymoron. How can you be a global small business? But e-commerce created the global small business where I can be literally at my kitchen table, but I'm sourcing from China. I'm selling in international markets. I'm selling across the entire 50 states, right? So so you need a small business lawyer, but you don't need necessarily the small business lawyer that might help you open up like a tea shop in the middle of Main Street. You need somebody with that sort of international understanding of the world, but it had to be cheap, couldn't be the price, I couldn't be billing out like I was one of the top, law firms or something like that. So scalability was key, looking for economies of scale, which we found in the fact that a lot of the Amazon businesses, although every business is unique, the underlying architecture that we're all relying on Amazon or Shopify or, whatever, there is a room for economies of scale, which is really how I got to create this business. The other important piece I'll leave out, I left out, in the early 2000s, I actually was a reseller. I paid for law school, or a big chunk of law school, basically flipping DVDs and video games, other clearance stuff I was finding. They didn't call it retail arbitrage back then. It was just like scamming. People used to call me a scammer. I was like, why am I scamming? I'm like, I didn't understand.
That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed. But for some reason, people get offended about buy low, sell high. Like that's literally how our economy works. But if you're doing it right, at least that's how it's supposed to work. You can certainly do it the other way. So that was that. And then when I was at Microsoft, my wife actually worked in seller performance. So I used to hang out with the seller performance team because they were more our age. Like all my colleagues at Microsoft were kind of like married with kids, and I was in my mid-20s. So I would literally go to, and I was a seller. So like I was super interested in the dinner combo, right? Because they're literally talking about like the latest issues that they're dealing with on the seller performance team just openly at like the dinner in Capitol Hill, Seattle. And I was just like, this is really cool. So I had a lot of weird things happened in my life that brought me here. It almost felt like fate. Like, I didn't really believe in fate, but now it's just like too many weird coincidences in my life experiences that led me to say, okay, this is something you should be doing. Like, it was very weird, but that's how I got here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember the sales tax, and I don't know, there might be a lot of people who listen to this who don't remember when the term nexus was thrown around all the time. And
oh my God, yeah.
I mean, I got to give you a ton of credit. I mean, like, didn't you? I mean, you're kind of responsible for the whole beating back California and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, I wish we could have done more, but we definitely, were on the forefront of getting the laws changed so that we're in the situation we're now, where Amazon is the tax collector. There were one or two states that were kind of going down that road around the time I started, but Amazon was trying to stop it because the second that they became responsible for the tax, they lost that competitive advantage of being able to sell stuff tax-free. So we accelerated it by, lobbying California, by lobbying this, talking to the federal government, just talking to lots of states and about, how they need to push this along. Not to say that this was ever the seller's responsibility to begin with. We did bring lawsuits to try to challenge those prior taxes. That people in 2019 were getting tax bills going back to 2012. My only regret is it did typecast me a little bit. Some people, a lot of my clients, like I had a client sells business for like $10 million and we represented him, but he's like, I almost called another lawyer because I didn't even know you did that. I thought you were the tax guy. So the typecasting was kind of a little bit of a struggle to get over initially because, it is something I knew a lot about. It's constitutional law. I certainly taught a course in that in New York at a law school, but it's really not what we do at our core. But the issue was just so revolutionary in terms of like constitutional law and commerce that I just was so into it. And I loved that we were able to. I wish we could have done more. Like I still feel like California got away with a lot, and they're still terrorizing people now and again for back taxes, but at least now when you sell on Amazon, you don't have to deal with sales tax, the way we used to have to deal with it.
Yeah, it was a pain. I think, I don't know. I think as this conversation evolves, I think we're gonna see this over and over again, where with the tax thing, Amazon kind of wanted to wash their hands of it and push it off on the responsibility off onto other people, and I'm guessing we're gonna see this over and over again.
Yeah, Amazon does what's in Amazon's best interest. And it was on no secret that Amazon, it wasn't just about the hassle of sales tax. They already did sales tax for their own stuff. It was the competitive advantage. It was that if we can sell stuff through the marketplace and claim that that's somehow not our responsibility, then that creates a massive opportunity to sell stuff sales tax free. So now you're at a 5, 6, 7, 10% advantage, 12% in some states. Over your competitor. So a lot of small businesses and large businesses were hurting because you'd go to the store, you'd window shop, you'd talk to the sales people, but especially if you're buying like expensive electronics, you can just go on Amazon on your phone in the parking lot and buy it tax free and save, $100, $200. I used to say, if you're doing it right, Prime should have been free for everybody. It should have been seen as like a free service to you, because if the amount of money you could save on sales tax just shopping through Amazon should have more than paid for your Prime subscription back in the day, if you were doing it right. I actually wrote an editorial at CNN called Prime was free for everybody, and everybody misunderstood what I meant. They all thought I was trying to say that Prime was like free, like no cost, but it's really about how we basically funded it, because all the sales tax revenue that Amazon avoided that should have gone to the government was used to fund their warehouse and distribution network. So we kind of all paid for it in a way. So
interesting. Hey, Amazon sellers, are you tired of juggling multiple tools to manage your FBA business? Well, say goodbye to the chaos and hello to Boxum, the all-in-one software that streamlines your shipments, inventory, and profitability tracking in just a few clicks. With Boxum, you'll cut your shipment time in half, gain real-time insights into your business, and keep your inventory under control, all from one simple, intuitive dashboard. Don't waste time. Try Boxum today and take your Amazon FBA game to the next level. Check it out over at cleartheshelf.com/Boxum and start your 14-day free trial now.
It's interesting how the conversations that you were privy to in your network, kind of led you to here, which I think is at the basis of a topic that's near and dear to our heart, which is networking. So I'm glad Kismet, or whatever you want to call it, led you here.
Me too.
Paul, we have a lot of sellers' sanity is very fragile right now, and I think a lot of people are tuning into this episode, hoping that you'll save it. So, no pressure,
Yeah, and maybe I should set expectation. I don't know if I can. No, I think we can help. I think a lot of the issues are going to be, some of it's just going to be hard truths that, the game has changed. It ain't what it used to be, but, I'll do what I can to help.
Appreciate it. Based on the volume of responses and questions that we got when we announced we were going to be talking to you, there's a lot to cover, like Chris said. So I want to start getting into Amazon specifically from seller perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You had some conversations that not everybody can have, and connections with people. So I'm wondering if you could describe Amazon's approach and what makes it unique compared to maybe other platforms, and their processes, how Amazon approaches things.
That's interesting. So, the way Amazon approaches things, you have to look at worldviews. You have to look at the news. You've got to read what their pain points are, and you've got to put yourself in that situation. And I think this is something that I'm good at because I spent so much of my life in huge mega corporations. So you start to think like, I know how they think, right? So, for example, sometimes when I can't get something done for my seller clients, I will call. We will get on the phone with their Congress people and have their Congress people reach out to Amazon. Why? Because at the moment, although maybe less so now, but certainly for the last few years, who is Amazon most afraid of? The government, right? It was the antitrust. So getting a state senator or congressperson to call up Amazon and say, what are you doing to my constituent here? Was a way for us to sometimes get through the barrier that otherwise other people couldn't. And so it's just, you kind of have to be on alert and paying attention. So let's talk about, people struggle with invoices, right? There's two issues when it comes to invoice. It used to be one. The one issue was, is it authentic or not, right? But then there was this article that came out in CNBC about a certain distributor that was caught by the California Highway Patrol with tons of stolen goods. Now, everybody who ever had an invoice from that company is got their accounts frozen and all sorts of problems. So now what we have to think is, now Amazon has two issues when we're looking at invoices. We have, is it authentic and is it stolen? And the trend, if you will, is as those issues become more prominent, Amazon has to take action as a corporation to make sure their supply chain is clean from counterfeit goods, which they'll never fully do, but they try, they try hard, and clean from certainly stolen goods. So that's why inventory authenticity now is really, we've seen a massive contraction in the number of suppliers that Amazon will take invoices from or receipts from, if we're talking about stores like Sierra Trading, TJ Maxx, right? Like and so for me, it's like, I can always kind of get a sense of what is on Amazon's mind. Like right now, consumer product safety is going to be huge. Compliance has been huge for the last few years, and it's going to get, because again, read the news, consumer product safety, Amazon, you are now responsible for the recalls. You can't just put your sellers on the hook and say, you do the recalls and you can use our recall service if you'd like. No. You're responsible. And personal injury, right? We saw this too, right? Around the same time as the sales tax issue, and we're saying, hey, this is Amazon store, they should be collecting the tax. Back in the early 2010s, a lot of lawsuits would accuse Amazon of product liability, saying, you're responsible for this product hurting somebody, even though the seller was in China and is unreachable. And that worked. But as we got into the 2020s, we started to see a shift towards our argument saying, no, Amazon, this is your store. Just like any other store, whether it's on Main Street or online, if somebody gets hurt from a product you sold, you're responsible. This is called strict liability. So the tides shift, and whenever the tides shift, so does Amazon. So that is basically how we read Amazon and it's not easy, but I do think just because I grew up in that environment, I've been in, I know how big corporations. It's not, it's not just like one evil guy at the top going. No, it's like these consortium of lawyers, risk managers, risk aversion, compliance people, all trying to steer the ship the right way. Like with politicians. I know that when I in the companies I work with, that if you do something that causes a politician to contact your boss, you're probably getting fired. So that's why it's so powerful to get politicians involved sometimes, because it's like that, level of involvement means you must have done something really bad, and clearly the system doesn't work. And usually they want to even blame somebody in the company for that failure and claim they're going to do better. So it's just kind of a read situation, how you're reading it. So I don't know. That helps.
You said something interesting, and you made it obvious that, companies do have this fear of government. But you said, and you said, getting a politician can be helpful, but does that change under this new administration at all?
That's my biggest fear. When Donald Trump was first elected, in fact, the first time when I first started this whole journey, for lack of a better word, sorry to be cheesy, but like I started this, whatever this is, like before I even knew I had a law firm or anything, I was in a CNBC article about Donald Trump criticizing Amazon's tax policy, and the CNBC reporter was connected to me to get my comment on the matter. Him and Bezos were not good friends back then. Let's just put it that way, right? They did not like each other. Now, when you see Bezos at the inauguration, you see a complete, I don't know. I suspect with Lena Khan having left, who's the chair of the FTC, this antitrust case may fall by the wayside. Which means pricing mismatches are here to stay, or whatever the pricing, the cross-platform price policies are still here to stay. It concerns me a bit. It's no politician is going to be perfect, and so unfortunately, there's negatives, right? We have tariff concerns, right? That's not great for Amazon sellers if we have tariffs. But whether Bezos decides to fully cozy up to the administration, which he clearly has signaled his intent to. Makes me concerned that, maybe Amazon fears the politician less so today than they did, 4 years ago, because there's just not a threat there anymore. So, it's a real concern. Again, I'm not trying to be political here. I don't really care who's in office. I'm just talking about the political realities of how that affects us, right? Like just trying to, look at the facts as they are. And right now, I am concerned that, political intervention will not have the same effect as it has had in the past in cases.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Kind of on the same page there. That's kind of what I was thinking too. So let's dive into some like specifics, and these are things that people were curious about. And this is kind of along the line of account suspensions and things that Amazon does. But one of the first things people are curious about is, how does Amazon justify holding funds and inventory for suspended sellers, and do they do that on legal grounds?
Yeah, so they do. They have this sort of, if you're suspended because of Section 3 and your invoices are complete garbage, like they're just, show nothing, right? I shouldn't be mean. I don't want to be mean. Like, but they're, maybe they're from that place in California that got raided by, imagine that's your situation. Amazon's going to have a position to say, we can keep your inventory, we can keep your money, and we can use that to sort of protect against any losses that we may have incurred or may incur in the future. Now, in arbitration, I have seen that go away from my colleagues who I don't really have a ton of bandwidth to do a ton of I have great colleagues who are in practice who do arbitrations. They do a lot of them. I'm very up to speed on what goes on, but it's just what ends up happening is there may be an opportunity there to get your money back. The problem is what happens also in arbitration is Amazon's outside lawyers, usually a law firm. I don't want to say the law firm's name, but most people probably know which one it is, who've been through this. They will throw the book at you. They will go through your entire account history and look at everything that you've possibly done that was wrong, illegal, immoral, and they will, even if you didn't do it, or even if it's totally, taken out of context. I had a client who was reselling a product with terrible reviews, and their lawyers tried to blame him for the terrible reviews of the product. Like he was reselling a handful of them, but the fact that it had 500 negative review or whatever, they were just, you'd try to pin it on him. So, to answer your question, it's is it what they should be doing? Probably not. If you push hard enough, you might be able to get it back. But a lot of times the amount of money you spend to try to get that back, depending on how much is at stake, could be more than what it's worth. And the other issue is this arbitration clause, right? That we as sellers have zero rights to really push back on a legal basis, because we can't go to court. We can't do class actions. All of that stuff is barred by the contract we signed with Amazon. So what we're left with is going through an arbitration process that, can be fair. I'm not saying it's not fair, but it's a lengthy and can be expensive process. Now, there's some lawyers out there who will do that on contingency. But, that's their position. Their position is, hey, that we have losses known or unknown, and we believe it's, we have a right to hold this money. Do I think they have the right to hold it indefinitely? Absolutely not. I don't think they do either. It's just kind of hard to see, like, maybe after like 3 years or 4 years, you say, okay, whatever claim you think is out there is probably not out there. I can have my money back, but we've yet to see it go out that long. But I don't think they have a true right to hold it indefinitely, but they certainly have some right under their agreement to certainly set off any potential losses by basically reserving your inventory and funds as a collateral, if you will. So,
and I mean, there's not many, if any, sellers that are actually reading the agreement they are signing when they open up a seller account, is there?
It's almost like, what's the point? It doesn't matter. You can't negotiate it. You can't do anything about it. I mean, it's just, you're going to get screwed no matter what. This is something I get asked a lot too. Like, in arbitration, will I get my account back? Most likely not. Usually by the time, if you're truly arbitrary, I'm not talking about just sending a demand letter and threatening and trying to get into a conversation with their lawyers to see if there's maybe there's a misunderstanding you're trying to explain. But if you go through an arbitration, usually you're off the platform. But one thing you'll see their lawyers consistently argue when you're dealing with them in sort of pre-arbitration demand is they'll remind you that your presence on the platform is purely discretionary, meaning regardless of what you did or didn't do wrong or what you're accused of, they still have the right to just throw you off the platform just for any reason whatsoever. They just don't like you, right? Or they don't think you're a good fit. So people kind of forget that that's the other reason they can just say, you're not getting your account back because we just don't think you should be on our platform, because for whatever reason they want. So it's interesting. It is, yeah. Reading is one thing, but they do take a lot of liberties, and they do, it's things like that frustrate me. It's like, they won't tell us who the suppliers are that they won't accept, but there's a list for sure. Right. Mm-hmm. We know there's a list of suppliers that they don't want stuff from, but they won't tell us. So that's one of those things. Well, where's that in the policy? But
should we ever fear? I don't mind. Like, a lot of people will call us Amazon apologists, because I think we do try to, when news comes out, when policies change, we can empathize when we talk about the news, when we do a podcast, but Chris and I try to put ourselves in the shoes of Amazon as well and explain it from the way that they may be thinking, as much as we can do that. But I'm curious, with you saying, well, Amazon can kick you off for any reason whatsoever. Should a seller ever fear, uh, standing up to the man, if you will? I'm thinking of sellers like Molson, on Twitter. You may not be on Twitter, but there's a guy by the name of Molson Hart.
I know Mike Molson. I know very well. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
It's been a while to talk to him, but yeah, I've known him. He was on Tucker
and he's
Carlson.
Not off of the platform, but like, I don't know. It sort of worries me to shake my fist at that ivory tower.
Yeah, I don't think we don't need to be sycophantic to Amazon. I don't think, and I don't think like outright being critical of Amazon, like that type of retaliation, I don't think is something they want to be caught doing. Right. I wouldn't terribly worry about that too much. I mean, I don't think being a lot of people when I was, when the Online Merchants Guild, which is much more active, which was that nonprofit we set up to try to be a lobby for Amazon sellers and were for some time, but it kind of fizzled out. A lot of people were afraid. That was part of the point of having it, was just so that, hey, this organization can be that sort of harsh critic voice and you don't have to personally be named. But no, there were a lot of people who didn't mind putting their name on things. There were a lot of people who didn't mind submitting letters to Congress about the mistreatment of Amazon. I don't think it's like retaliation is a really big problem. Like you don't want to see, you don't optically and legally, you don't want to be seen retaliating against people who are speaking out in that way. Like that's not really what Amazon cares about. It's just they tend to act more based on their own internalized processes. Like I don't think being critical of Amazon is necessarily the path to being sort of blacklisted. People have those fears, but they're just they're criticized every day. They're used to it. It doesn't matter. Like people articles in the newspaper all the time about they did this wrong, they did that wrong. They're used to it. I don't think just being a voice should put you in any sense of like mistreatment. Yes, they can technically kick you off the platform for any reason according to their BSA, but that's not what they typically do, right? It's not just because you did nothing. It's not just because you were an outspoken critic of Amazon. That's not usual. I've yet to see that, and I don't think we will.
Mm-hmm. You referenced, you didn't say it by name, but you referenced OMG, or Online Merchants Guild, when you guys were getting that up and running. I see a bit of a renaissance in people wanting to do something like that again, be able to organize and kind of fight for seller rights.
Yes.
Do you think it's possible, or is the free rider problem too big to overcome?
The free rider problem shouldn't be a problem. People who have money at stake should just focus on what they need, right? Like if there's a bunch of people, and that's kind of how we structured it, right? Like we're like, look, if you're doing less than $1 million, just throw in $100 a year. Like we really weren't expecting, what we really wanted to see was more of the people who had skin in the game, like major skin in the game, take the lead. And if there's free, I mean, we all benefit, right? But the reality is we needed it. It should have survived. I mean, we were out there during the antitrust time, like saying, there are people in Congress making decisions about our future because they were trying to pass this legislation at the time that never got passed. And I'm like, why are we not voiced in this? Like, why are we literally sitting here talking to each other? And the frustration I find is it's just been impossible to rally people. When I started the guild, there were a lot of people who were sort of influencers in the community who said, yeah, I'll do my part doing this and that. All I was supposed to do was sort of just focus on like the legal and the lobbying stuff that I know how to do, right? I don't know how to rally a group of people together. I don't know how to socialize and make a trend go viral. But unfortunately, those people kind of just didn't deliver. I mean, I think they got intimidated. They got afraid to ask people for money. I don't know what it was, but it just became like all of a sudden I'm doing everything and this isn't going to work like this. But the theory is 100% correct. We should be doing this. And it's still there. Like if there's a group of people who want to take over the OMG and jump back in, like I've got the vehicle, there's even like money like to get started, but like it's there. It's just, I don't know. It's just rallying small businesses is really hard, I think. And it's, you know, I'm so used to the industry groups growing up at big corporations. You've got industry groups for everything. You got, you know, the regional bankers association of, you know, the Northeast, and just like everybody has an industry group that lobbies, that, you know, discusses issues, and we're just not doing that. We're so behind on that, and that's how we ended up in part in the situation, I think, is that we just missed the opportunity to build. I mean, what I was saying back in 2020, like 30 grand a month. Do you know what, you know, Amazon spends 1.5 million or something, or 14 million or something on lobbying every year. I don't know, some absurd amount. But they, for us as small businesses, even just like 30, 40 grand a month, the lobbying force we could build on that, considering that our members are actual voting constituents. Like if you have hundreds of thousands of people in a group who are backing this lobbying effort, knowing that these people actually vote, right? So I go into Congressman so-and-so's office and say, hey, I've got 50 people in your district that care, right? If you understand how congressional math works, that's huge. That means, because when one person goes to a congressperson, they're usually like, whatever, that guy's kind of a wacky, you know, whatever, we'll say. 2 people, okay, that's weird. 3 people, huh? 4 people, right? It starts to get exponential awareness, because the amount of people who are actually upset about a certain thing enough to go to the congressperson, when you get to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people, it starts to feel like this is really a problem in your district. So our ability to have so many sellers in so many different locations, to kind of get them to band together into little and use that, I think it would have been super powerful if we were able to pull it off. And 30, 40 grand a month across our community is nothing. And I was doing it totally volunteer. Like, I'm not even trying to get, like, I love this stuff. I think it's cool. Right. I always say, like, I want to just, my law practice was like just to sustain my ability to, because I wanted to do all this other cool stuff, like lead the e-commerce lobby. But it's just not, I don't know. Hopefully it gets figured out. Hopefully somebody figures it out, because it's still a great opportunity to sort of bring the balance of power back, because legislation would help. And there are pain points that I think both Republicans and Democrats would understand, right? Amazon's capitulation to China. I don't think anyone in Congress fully understands how pro-China Amazon is. I get why. It's just a financial call. It's like, it's cheap, and they want to be cheap because that's what their customers want. But, you know, basically Amazon's trying to cut out the middleman as much as possible for as many products as possible. The American business owner being that middleman, right? Like, here, warehouse, you know, look at Temu and Shein, right? That's what Amazon wants. Just straight from the factory, lowest possible price, right? Rock bottom pricing makes the Prime member happy. So, you know, I would like to see legislation that says, no, you have to have a responsible party in the United States. You have to have, like, there's so much we could potentially push for to sort of protect our industry from just being completely gutted from overseas. But where are we? Where's our voice? Like, nobody seems to want to do that, you know? And I know people want to do it, but it's just like the ability to get everyone organized and coordinated so that we can execute. That was never meant to be me. I wish I could. I wish I had the ability. I'm not that kind of person. Like I said, I like to execute and do the work. But that part, the socializing aspect, I think, you know, if people are ready to do that again, you know, let's talk.
Yeah. I don't know if the people who are interested in doing that again listen to the show, but I'm going to reach out and just say, hey, maybe you guys ought to have a conversation.
For sure. Absolutely. It's kind of like our last hope now. It's like, we really need to do this. Because I'm afraid of where things are going. You know, I'm afraid if you don't sell a patented product on Amazon or somehow have some sort of significant IP protection that prevents others from selling competing products, it's going to be very hard to be a private label in the next few years, seller in a few years. So, you know, it's just going to be impossible, because it's, you know, that erosion, right, happens in almost every product category, right? Like, you have to go like 10 pages deep to find an ink cartridge that involves an American seller, right? A replacement printer. I mean, it's bad. So, and again, understanding like, okay, so taking my 2 years of experience at Walmart, most important thing, EDLP, investing in price. What does that mean? We need to make the prices as low as possible, because that's what the customers love us for. Amazon's the same way. They have to validate that Prime membership. I mean, that's the reason why they have that pricing. And I said this, you find me saying this, talking about this 5-6 years ago. The reason they have this whole controversial pricing policy where something else can't be advertised cheaper than Amazon online is exactly that. If Prime members are able to Google a product and see that it's $10 cheaper on a person's Shopify site, well, why am I a Prime member? What's the value of Prime? And if people suddenly wake up to the notion that Prime is not that great a value, I'm getting advertisements on the movies now, prices aren't even that good, I can just go directly to these websites, so I could shop on Amazon, that's like Amazon's biggest nightmare. So again, it goes back to kind of one of your original questions, is like, you've always got to kind of put yourself in the mindset of that company. And Amazon's mindset is the Prime member is like, on the retail side, the Prime member is God, and everything they do is for the benefit of the Prime member. So when you ask yourself, why are they doing this? It's like, it's because the Prime member, it's for the benefit of the Prime member. They can't lose that. They cannot lose that loyalty of Prime, or else, because they make a lot of money from that, right?
Yeah.
So, and
I've got to ask this question. It was farther down in the show, but you mentioned it already. You mentioned the price parity. There are a lot of people who believe that is price fixing. And is it actually price fixing, requiring price parity across platforms?
I don't know. I see both sides of the argument, and I don't think anyone knows, because that case was thrown out in DC. There's a civil case going on, but that is actually the crux of the FTC's argument in their antitrust argument against Amazon. Like they're still pushing that agenda that it is a form of price fixing or unfair competition. So I think I understand why. I don't know if I get to full price fixing. It's more of like a more favored nation. Like, I don't fully get there, to be honest with you. I think this was sort of my disappointment in the FTC's case, is I didn't think that they did a great job. Like, I don't think their arguments were what I would have gone for, right? Mm-hmm. I think back when we were doing the FTC antitrust stuff, our Online Merchants Guild was the #1 cited organization in the antitrust report. Like when they did that initial report back in 2021, I can't remember. You read it, you look at all the footnotes, like they're citing our work. That we spent weeks gathering information from members and sort of reducing it down to a memo, just sort of explaining the experiences that people have had on Amazon. And of all the ones that they picked, I think they went with this price fixing one, which, like I said, it was thrown out in DC. It's been a while since I've read through the case law on that, and whether that's truly price fixing, because it's sort of like, it doesn't force you to raise the price, but it does kind of, make you want to raise the price on Amazon. I mean, you could just not sell it, it's definitely wrong. I definitely don't think it should be the right thing I definitely don't think they should do that, but whether it's against the law under current antitrust, I don't know. And Amazon, but it does, Amazon does have that monopoly power, and I think that's their point. The other is the forcing everyone to use Amazon's fulfillment services for Prime. That, why was seller fulfilled Prime not more prevalent? Why won't it be prevalent? That's the other issue they seem to be focused in on. That's it. I don't know. I don't know if that causes Amazon to get broken up. Now, it's, but I know the policy sucks, but I know why Amazon does it. I don't know if it's illegal. Like, I don't know it, because like I said, I was surprised, because I read the DC court's decision. They basically said it was a nothing burger when they ruled on it. When the DC Attorney General tried to bring that as an antitrust case, I could see both sides. It just never resonated to me as like a really strong price fixing case. But that's what they got. That's what they're going with. I feel like we could probably find better stuff to go with if we wanted to. But again, I don't think breaking up Amazon is the true answer here. Regulations, protections, protecting sellers in the way we have certain consumer protections, right? Mandating that, accountability for what's being sold on their platform, or requiring, Chinese warehouses to have a U.S. partner. I don't know. Like, there could be, smarter people than me could probably think of a million laws that we could probably enact that would ensure our community is protected and not just going to be completely extinct in a matter of years, and replaced with just China-based factories. who have no connection to the United States whatsoever, don't pay U.S. taxes. Like it's I just hope somebody wakes up to that reality and tries to do something before it's too late.
Yeah.
It's interesting how universal the wanting to keep the customer's attention or essentially dwell time. It's something I've been obsessed with lately. It's, because you even see it in social media. You see platforms, de-emphasize posts that would have links that would send somebody off platform to look at an article or something like that. And that's essentially the same thing that you were talking about is having the customer, with the prices, make sure the prices are as low as possible to keep them on the platform, give them a free movie and everything that's associated with Prime. It's interesting how that's kind of like a universal concept.
Exactly.
Attention truly is the modern most valuable currency.
Attention is the currency. That's true. That is true. That's really good. That's really, I didn't think about it like that, but that's actually really true. That the platforms really do work that hard outside of, they want to keep you in as much as possible and not have you stray. So unfortunately, I think it will stay status quo for some time. I don't think we're going to see any major changes. I think we'll see the antitrust rhetoric. I don't know what they're going to do with the current case. That case was looking like it was going to take 10 years anyway. With the new president, and the new FCC chair, maybe they figure out a way to wrap it up. So it looks like, Amazon takes the slap on a wrist now, and that's it. That's my guess.
Yeah. You mentioned something which a lot of anytime an issue comes for arbitrage sellers, there are a bunch of private label gurus on social media that love to call the death of arbitrage, and because they're trying to sell courses and whatnot, which it's a bunch of garbage.
Oh yeah.
But you said something interesting, because one of the arguments they make is eventually you're going to have to deal with brands directly, and you're going to have to connect with them and get your inventory that way. That's their argument as to how arbitrage will die. However, and you mentioned something that talking about private label having direct relationships with brands. However, I feel like an opposing force also, because the Amazon trucks right now have a saying on it that says everything and the kitchen sink, right? So, which tells me what, and I was thinking it even before that slogan showed up. Amazon wants to have everything in its catalog. Again, it keeps you on the platform if you can find absolutely everything you're thinking of. Yeah, the everything store, exactly. But Amazon doesn't have the infrastructure to be able to offer it themselves, right? So our argument has always been that Amazon needs the arbitrage sellers. They need us scouring the clearance aisles and finding the discontinued products, because that helps them achieve their ultimate goal of the everything store. So I guess I'm asking how those two things coexist, and boil it down to the essential question: is Amazon out to get the arbitrage sellers?
Okay. A few years ago, I was having a conversation with one of the lawyers at Amazon, and they said, no, we absolutely love our arbitrage sellers. Now, let's go back. Now, I've said the same thing, and I'm going to tell you why I say it, because this goes back to the same thing. If you want to get a sense of what's going on at Amazon, just think it through, okay? What is going on the inside, right? It's not against the law in this country to break a MAP policy, right? Like it's not like the MAP policy, right? The idea behind MAP is if you don't like the price somebody's selling your stuff at, right? Like a brand can't tell you what price to sell your stuff at, right? That's a huge legal problem. What they can do is say, I'm not going to sell to you anymore if I don't like it, right? I can cut you off. The problem is if they can't control where you're getting it from, it's hard for them to cut you off, right? Because they can't, right? If you're getting it somewhere else, right, through a leak in their supply chain, that's on them. So what ends up happening is we as arbitrage sellers or the arbitrage seller community, and I say we because that's what I used to do when I was an Amazon seller, 20 years ago. And I it's a special place in my heart for the arbitrage community. and we obviously help a lot of arbitrage sellers every day. But look at what Amazon's business model is. They want to make, let's go back to the premise. They want to make Prime members happy, right? What makes a Prime member happier than seeing a product that other retailers have agreed not to sell for less than X, $20 cheaper, $30 cheaper, right? That's a great experience. I actually went to Walmart like 5 years ago. I used to work there, and I tried to convince them. I said, guys, if you do realize that all that negative margin, that's what we call it when it goes to the clearance rack, all that negative margin just becomes Amazon's profit, right? You do get that, right? Like you're fueling the profitability of this store because you just need to throw this stuff out. And so you knock it down to nothing. But all that's doing is fueling Amazon's profit. So here's what you should do. Create like a derivative store and like let us control your clearance. Give us a right of first refusal to all your clearance products. Let us build a clearance store around it. So at least you're not giving that money to Amazon, because that's what you're doing. But in classic Walmart fashion, it's like you can't explain anything to anyone at Walmart. It takes 38,000 tries and like 10 years for change to occur at Walmart. That's been my experience working. You know, I love Walmart, and don't get me wrong, I love the people there, but it just, the culture sometimes just feels so backwards because it just can't move. It's like a rigid ship, right? They hate e-commerce. Why are they so behind in e-commerce? They could have bought Amazon when I started at Walmart. They even used to joke about that. Why? Because the people who dominate Walmart are the most successful the most successful CEOs at Walmart, like their sub CEOs, right? Like Doug McMillan's the main CEO, but then you have the CEO of stores, you have the CEO of Sam's Club, you have the CEO of .com. The CEO of stores is like the most powerful person there because he's got the most successful business. He hates .com, right? They hate .com because that's taking away his margin, right? That's taking people out of the store. So that internal siloism, that competitive nature creates this chaos in these corporations because they don't think about their future. They only think about their own bottom line, not the overall good of the company. So, it's that kind of thinking that just, really, in my opinion, allowed Amazon to become the behemoth it is, because like all that, think about what Amazon would have been if Walmart didn't have a clearance aisle, right? I mean, it's over the last 10 years, it's insane what you can get there. So going back to your point, Amazon loves it. Amazon loves arbitrage. The challenge is just the documentation. The problem is that as they're learning, there's organized crime rings inside of Amazon. There's so much that they have to manage in terms of risk that it's just gotten to the point where they have to be this way. And I think that's the hard truth that people have. It's like, I don't actually blame Amazon for some of these Section 3s, which we'll get into, that people are getting, because it's like, yeah, you're looking at that sourcing and you're like, God, that's really irresponsible. That's really not, if you understand what Amazon's worried about, stolen goods, inauthentic, right, merchandise, right, or damaged products. If you understand that, that's what they're trying to control. They're not trying to stop you necessarily from going to Sierra Trading Company, because Sierra Trading Company is super reputable. Everybody, like, you're not going to find counterfeit goods at Sierra Trading. Very unlikely you're going to, right? Unless somebody returned one and got by the, it's just a matter of like, it's like verifiable, credible sourcing. That's what this is about, right? Like I always say, if you tell me your source is from like, the Brooklyn downstairs wholesaler, you're going to have a problem. But if you're from like US Foods Inc., a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, no problem, right? When I have to go to Amazon to defend an invoice, it's pretty much become impossible to defend the former, but the latter, billion-dollar distributor, much easier. Not always you're going to win, because even there's some publicly traded Korean makeup companies that are not so well liked. Again, we don't know what Amazon does or doesn't like, but there's certain companies where it's like you just can't argue with the credibility. Walmart's a great example. Like, nobody's arguing with Walmart's credibility. We don't think Walmart's selling stolen goods. So I don't think Amazon at all hates arbitrage. I think they love arbitrage. I think they love the fact that there are things that you can find on Amazon that are just absurdly cheap because of the way we acquire them. So I don't see it. And yes, people have been singing about the end of arbitrage, and to some degree, I think there was a window in time, maybe 2017 to 2021, where if you were, pivoted to private label, you definitely had an opportunity to cash in and make a lot of money. That ship, though, has sailed, right? Maybe it's on TikTok now, right? If you can master that art form of having your influencer peddle your stuff and churning goods, maybe that's where it is. But I think today, as an arbitrager, just saying I'm going to go into private label. I mean, sure, if you're making, you know, a ton of money in arbitrage, you want to take like 10 or 20 grand that you're not going to feel and try a private label product, God bless you. But statistically, you're probably not going to do well anymore. Like, it's just so much harder. You know, and there are exceptions. There are people who are just really good at making products, people who really put the thought in. But like, if you're just going in for like, you know, I'm going to be the 24th best avocado slicer on Amazon because Helium 10 says I might have a chance at it, right? Good luck. Good luck. It's not that easy anymore. Okay. If you were doing Amazon in 2014 private label, 2015 private label, it was pretty much a guaranteed win, right? Because you were just there. You were the only one there. It just ain't that world anymore. So I think arbitragers who have the means and want to branch out and try private label, go for it by all means. It's, you know, understand it's risky, but I'm a fan of reselling and arbitrage. And I think if that's what you're that's what you're good at and you're making good money doing it, I mean, why stop? You know, and will Amazon eventually say party's over and require you to just, you know, be a direct wholesaler for the brand? I don't know. I feel like they lose a lot if they do that, because again, now everyone's at that price on Amazon, right? Or if at that point, why even have resellers? Why not just go direct vendor central then with these brands, right? Then you can negotiate better pricing. Why even have like these wholesalers? Why just push everyone in a vendor, which is a potential, but you know,
that's something that Amazon seemed to be getting away from most recently,
right?
Pushing away vendors and moving to third party.
Moving to third party, right? So it doesn't. I don't know. People who make those calls, I don't really. I think, you know, you could sit down and dissect it and take them apart pretty quickly. I think this is just, you know, people say these things. You know, private label sellers hate arbitrage for some reason. Well, I know why, because you guys are reselling their stuff. You know, smaller mid-sized brands that find Amazon sellers grabbing their stuff and reselling. They call you a hijacker. They don't know what a hijacker is. That's not what a hijacker is. Hijacker isn't just somebody reselling your product on Amazon. Hijacker is when you go in and you change a listing, right? When you're buying a swimming pool floaty and all the reviews talk about how it's really good at nail clipping, right? That's a hijack listing. Like, just because you have somebody on your listing reselling doesn't mean they're a hijacker. And you know, there's rules for how you're supposed to deal with that. A lot of people don't also, you know, a lot of the private label sellers don't like that. They don't like the fact they want to just go in and file these IP claims and counterfeit this, you know, and they don't realize how stupid that is. You know, that's dangerous.
Well, I'm gonna do my very best not to clip this section and just start dunking on people, because that's not fair to you. But I'm tempted.
Don't clip it. Don't clip. I'm not I support everybody. We do the work for everybody. I'm just telling you what I see. You know, I'm not. Do not clip if you don't want to. It certainly doesn't bother me. I'm just, you know, I private label people. There's one benefit of private label for sure. If you are successful, the amount of money you can make is drastic, right? We've closed we do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, business exits and business acquisitions, right? There are these guys, these aggregators, Thrasio, Perch, Razor, CellerX, whatever, right? These guys were buying up Amazon brands left and right. Okay. My law firm, my little rinky-dink law firm, my little boutique law firm, right? We helped our clients realize over $500 million in exits in the last couple of years to those, you know, especially during the height of the aggregator bubble. $500 million. Okay. People could start a business. They could, you know, they get a COVID bump and they were suddenly making $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. And they could sell that business to an aggregator for $4 million, right? Insane. Now, most of those aggregators didn't do so well afterwards. But the point is that ability to achieve a multiple isn't something you're going to achieve in arbitrage. It's and people do ask me that all the time. And arbitrage, like, can I sell my business? It's like, not really. It's kind of hard. I'm like, maybe if you have a workforce of 100 people throughout the United States, scouring every retail, like that's, you got a workforce in place. Okay. Like now you start to sound like you have something, but if you're just like, I go to TJ Maxx every day and look for finds or wherever, I don't really think you have a sellable business. Like you don't have it's not repeatable, right? Like there's a missing link there. You don't have any IP. You don't have, there's no real asset to what you're doing other than just the inventory. Your business is worth whatever inventory you have on hand, basically. So you're not going to sell it for a high multiple like these private. So the private label brings you that potential of not only of making money and then being able to one day sell it at a high multiple, but just so much harder to do because China is just crushing everybody, right? It's and there's a double standard with China. Seems like Amazon, we have clients who have compliance issues, FDA this, EPA this, and they're like, what? I got 10 competitors who aren't registered with any of these organizations. I am, and I'm still getting more. Amazon's asking me about my documents and suspending my ASIN. Meanwhile, 10 of these competitors from China don't even have those registrations in the first place. That is something I cannot quite eat. So when I see that, I put my mind in Amazon. Like, is that them saying, what, we're only doing this to the American sellers because we don't want to bother our China seller? Like, is it that is it that bad?
And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually starting to get dangerous. There have been not many. I wouldn't say it's a dozen or 20 or anything like that, but there have been singular reports, which may be anecdotal, of pets and even I think one person dying from taking in consumables that are like that. Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
One of the cases I worked on in 2018 was one of the first cases where Amazon was actually held liable for injuring somebody. It was called the Oberdorf case. And this was a woman who bought a dog collar and it like shattered and she lost her eye as a result, lost her eyesight in one eye. But there has been so many instances. The powder, they bought some sort of like it was like a caffeine powder, energy powder, but it was like stripped because it was soaked. So like it all got concentrated or something. So when the guy, he died, I wasn't laughing at the guy, just crazy stuff, lead and everything. I mean, the things we see, dangerous products are common, throughout Amazon. It just does seem like a double standard, like where they're really enforcing it against the Americans, but then it's just like China just, so what? This is something that we also get hired to do a lot. I talk about weird things we do in our practice. Like I almost view my practice, sometimes we're just fixers. Like I don't know what to call what I do. Like we're just hired as fixers. And one of the things we've been doing is we've been, if our clients are compliant with the law and they're seeing that their competitors are not, we are pushing to get them taken down. We're going to Amazon's legal teams and saying, hey, this is something we do. Like, hey, here are 10 companies that have no registrations. They're not following the law. They should not be legally allowed to sell this product. Maybe you want to take action because, obviously the next step is just to go directly to those agencies and say, hey, here's 10 companies 10 products Amazon's selling that don't have appropriate compliance documentation. So, and this is something we get hired to do all the time. Because it's like, I tell my clients, like, if you're sick, don't take the competition. If your competition is breaking the law, don't just sit there and take it. Do something about it. That's on you, the seller, right? That's something you can do something about, right? If your competition is breaking the law, right? So, but you're 100% right. It's a total double standard. It feels like.
Well, I think immediately after we stop recording this, the Rasick garlic press the demo's going in the trash. So I think that's
I don't buy it. I don't buy anything. Oh my God. I don't even trust the stuff that, and I know the arbitrage, but it's like, it's so scary because the stuff we've seen, we literally, and sometimes it's sad because you have clients coming to us and they swear they're compliant. I'm like, dude, your stuff's tested positive for this really dangerous stuff. What are you doing? Like, well, could I just sell through it? Your product can suffocate babies. All right, well, I'll fix the thing, but could I just sell through the ones we have? Yeah, sure. As long as only like 2 or 3 babies die, I think that's fine. If you can promise me only 2 or 3 more babies will die or potentially die, it's, and I feel for their mentality. Like I get what they're feeling. Like they're just like, this is a lot of money I'm about to lose. this is the problem. This is where small businesses, it's tough because it's like, huge companies like Target or KitchenAid, like they're built, they can withstand those types of recalls typically. They certainly understand that the legal ramifications of not taking those seriously. We learned this from the Ford Pinto case back in the day, right? It's probably not worth it. But when you're really small, like it's so hard because that, $20,000 write-off can kill you. It can, or 50,000 or 100,000, depending on how much inventory you have. But sorry.
Smaller the business, the closer the emotion is to the surface.
Right. And you're
with
like, are you thinking with your head clear? Like your product is dangerous, may cause babies to die. You want me to ask if you want me to see if there's a legal way you can sell through them? Like there isn't, but like, are you sure you really want, I get it. Like, and I don't mean to belittle any of those people who've been in that situation. Our clients typically do the right thing. At least we advise them to, and not to cut corners, but the emotion of what they're really trying to say is, I can't believe how much money I just lost. And is there really nothing I can do about it? And that's the real, you got to look past what they're just kind of processing. And you say, like, unfortunately, no, there's not, but do the right thing.
That's exactly the same thing that happens when massive, changes, cause tools to malfunction that we use and subscribe to. And that you kind of see that in a lot of the social media groups and people complaining. That's the same exact thing. It's like it's just the frustration over the loss of revenue and inconvenience of it. But Paul, so let's get it. Let's try to stay ahead of this, or give some advice so sellers can stay ahead of this. What would you say are best practices, or what steps should a seller take if they receive a notice from Amazon of a potential suspension?
I mean, look, I'm not trying to promote Seller Basics, but I'm going to tell you something about Seller Basics. Okay. The program we run, it's $100 a month. It's like $1 a day after you take a tax deduction. It's cheap for a reason. I hate suspension. I don't like, that's not the business I want to be in. We're very good at it. Joy, who runs it, is very good at it. It's not, I prefer things that people are happy about. I love M&A. I love exits because people are happy when they're selling their business, right? Usually, right? But to get to the point, I don't recommend people do it on their own. I just think people are screwing it up too much. And sometimes we can't walk it back. Even when people are members of Seller Basics, sometimes I'm like, don't, just like, you're already paying for our service. Just come straight to us. Like, don't try to do it on your own. Like, you're already paying for it, right? It's no skin off our back. We can handle it. We're fine. But it's like, read it. First things first, read it. And then read it with a couple things in mind. One, with the understanding is that it may have nothing to do with the actual problem. Sometimes, like, they're given these script answers and they pick the wrong thing. Like, sometimes they'll say, like, your identity documents are fraudulent. No, it's just because you didn't put the four corners of your identity document in the picture. It just, you just cut off by accident the bottom part, right? That's just the stupidity of Amazon. So sometimes, like, reading it, don't overreact. Certainly apologizing is almost never the answer, right? Like, if you're apologizing, well, a couple reasons why. One is, like, second chances on Amazon are almost gone now. This is another thing that sucks. Like, we all have to be very good now. We don't get second chances. They're very hard to get. Okay. You may get your money back. You may get your stuff back, but second chances, depending on the gravity of the situation, are very hard to come by. Okay. So this is another reason why it's like, you really need to seek professional help. And I didn't used to say this, but it's just the reality. It's scary out there and you don't want to blow it, but you definitely want to read it, try to understand it, do your research, figure out what, if it's a number of customer complaints, go look at your voice of the customer complaints. And then the goal of your appeal really is supposed to be about why they're wrong as much as you can. If you're writing an apology appeal, then, you got the plan of action, and that tends to work less and less these days. Which we're really trying to do is we're trying to poke holes in Amazon's findings, right? You violated the expiration date policy. You violate, go do a bin check. What happened? What happened was somebody complained in the voice of customer that your product didn't expired in like 2 years. Well, that's more than enough time according to Amazon's own expiration date policy. but you still get your ASIN shut down for it. Be very, very, very attentive to what Amazon's asking for. People just don't read. We read fast, right? We're trained to read fast, but when you read for detail, you start to see the nuance of what they're trying to say, and you have to sort of, again, really answer the questions being asked. Don't overdo it. Don't write a narrative that's like a 10-page long, story, because that's not useful. If you're supplying invoices, make sure you're following the appropriate, formatting. Make sure that your invoices are fully visible. If you're annotating them, make sure they know that it's labeled. Even the file names matter. I would honestly suggest you have Joy on, the person who leads my account health team on the seller base, because she's like, she has that attention to detail. I'm just a lawyer. I just like to talk. She has that attention to detail and that understanding, that nuance of what Amazon's looking for and what's needed to get this through. But biggest mistake overall, just don't apologize. Don't go immediate to apology mode. There's used to be this old, some of these old school, like suspension gurus, they used to charge like thousands of dollars, used to say, like, even if you didn't do anything wrong, you always have to find a reason why to say you're sorry. That's not the case anymore. It hasn't been the case for years. I think I started saying that, and now they're copying me and saying that they're also now saying that's not the case. But you really don't want to be apologized. Just go straight to apology mode and then make things worse. If somebody sends you, if you're getting a message that something's counterfeit, by all means, do not say you're sorry, you had no idea it was counterfeit. Please, God, don't do that, because for a couple of reasons. One, you have no idea if they're actually telling the truth. I can't tell you how many times my clients have been accused of counterfeit. It's not counterfeit, right? Happens all the time.
Right? My polo shirt doesn't fit just right. Obviously, it's counterfeit. I didn't
must be counterfeit.
I didn't gain 10 pounds over the holidays.
Right. No. It just this fit me this way. I've been wearing the same shirt for 20 years, and now I buy a new one and it doesn't fit. It's nonsense. So when you sell help for like $1, $3 a day, but like whatever, like $1 or $2, like $1, like after tax deduction, I kind of just like, get the help, just pay for the help, just get the help, because it's so cheap. And it should, obviously that's why we did that way. That's why it's a subscription, because, you have to be in the program, because it's like, I call it, it's like health insurance. We're not an insurance program, but it's like, the theory is it's like health insurance for your Amazon account. Like, you go to the doctor, you got a problem, you feel a cough, go talk to the doctor. Don't just go on WebMD and try to figure out, because that usually ends up going wrong. And so I just think in this environment, going at it alone, unless you're just like somebody else who's really good at this, has been doing this for years, and like you're one of those people who, like, could technically be in the service provider industry, like, unless you're that guy or girl, woman, I would just get help, because it's like people make mistakes, and sometimes they are their own worst enemy when they're dealing with appeals. And it's just, the price point is so low. It's just like, I just think, with programs like that, like, you should just, whether it's my program or someone else, I don't know, but there are programs out there. I'm not the only one, but I'm just like, at those price points, like, it's crazy to do this stuff on your own anymore, when your entire business is balanced on this, right? You're making $2 million a year in sales. You're paying yourself $200,000. What are you going to do if you don't have Amazon? Like, this is crazy, people. I don't know. It's like, it's just, don't go it alone. I wish I had tips and tricks. I'm just not a firm believer anymore in this environment that's the way to do it. I think you have professionals for a reason.
Yeah, that's a good point. It kind of gets into understanding why you're doing what you're doing. I think a lot of people come into this with there's almost like an implied guilt for paying for a course, or paying for education, or paying for a professional, when, air quotes, everything's free on YouTube. So I think a lot of people enter the space with some sort of, tab A goes into slot A. You can do this all yourself. But I mean, you're making a good point. It's let's remember, why you're doing what you're, and simply just listening to your talk and the insights that you're bringing, and you're deconstructing a lot of misstatements that are out floating around in the industry right now with sellers. So that's a pretty important point that you're making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, it's not that arbitrage is dead, or any chance, or anywhere near that, but Amazon's looking for serious people now, right? and what you're learning on YouTube. Like, I mean, YouTube can sometimes tell you the why, usually not good at the how, right? Depending on what it is. But I mean, the reality is like Amazon is tightening up. They want serious people, and they want people who understand what they're looking for to do what they're looking for. They have no problem with you if you know what you're doing, right? I mean, you're going to have issues. You're going to get flagged. You're going to get, but you'll get through it if you know what you're doing. And, you know, when we go to the Amazon legal teams with cases that we think, you know, we're going to them. I don't go to Amazon. So like, you know, we've developed a relationship with Amazon over the years. We don't charge a premium for, you know, we have seller basics in that company, and there's no extra charge to go above the top, right? Like there's no, like that would be unethical in my opinion. We don't do that. Okay. It's part of your $100 a month. What we do though is part of, I think, the relationship we've had with Amazon over the years is based on the fact that we're, you know, you've got a law firm, you've got a compliance company, these cases are being vetted. Okay. I'm not taking the guy who's got invoices handwritten from his neighbor and saying he should be, you know, allowed to sell free, you know, we're taking cases where we're saying, look, we went through your process of appeal, right? We went through your process. It didn't work. We think the outcome is wrong. We think you got this one wrong. Here's why, right? This person got an IP complaint, and here's 10 emails from the brand talking about how they were going to file this IP complaint because you breached MAP. Okay. As you know, MAP policy is not enforceable according to Amazon's policies. They don't allow MAP enforcement using brand registry tools. So we can go to Amazon and say, hey, like we tried to bring this to the attention of seller support. It didn't work, but here's the 10 emails. You know, I think if you take a look at this, you'll see that, you know, the invoices are solid. And this person clearly doesn't understand their obligation. In fact, that's how a couple of years ago, we started getting brand registry rights taken. Like I think we were the first, I'd like to take credit for it, the first service provider, law firm, whatever, depending on which side of the business did it, to get Amazon to actually start stripping brand registry rights away from certain brands that were, you know, engaging what we called brand registry abuse, because they were just basically misusing brand registry for, you know, trying to control the market as opposed to reporting actual counterfeit or trademark infringement.
So you've mentioned IP complaints, and this is something that seems to really get under Amazon sellers' skins. And a lot of them were curious, like, is there anything you can do when people falsely file IP or inauthentic complaints against you?
Okay, so there is. So let's start again, right? And you know, if you know a little bit of my history, you know, I didn't start out being the mind, you know, the person who was in the mindset of Amazon account health. I always wanted somebody else to do it. I never enjoyed the work. Like it almost was like too hurtful. Like I just didn't have the, you know, the heart for it because I just felt bad for everybody. But I've you know, to some degree, I've got on the policy side of it. I've had a bit of a, you know, I don't want to say seat at the table with Amazon, but certainly an ability to gain insight and discuss concerns and seek change. The IP policy it's tough because people don't really understand what it's for. People don't know how to use it. Amazon doesn't teach people how to use it. They claim they do not. The first thing you have to remember with IP claims is let's just look at the different types. You have copyright. Okay. Obviously there's potential for patent through Apex. But the most often there's trademark infringement. The ones we see most are counterfeit and counterfeit without a test buy if you're in resale. Those are the most common by far. Counterfeit without a test buy, I don't really understand the point of it, but it's there. It's like, you know, we may not have seen the product, but we know based on some reason or another that it's probably counterfeit. It's kind of, you know, and when you get that, Amazon doesn't typically take you down. It just goes against your score, or you can get a bunch of those. It's not a certain death, right? And you can try to get the brand to retract. Maybe you just offer to stop selling, or make some try to just see if the brand will retract on its own, or if, you know, like, hey, I'm not that, you know, or you can try to appeal to Amazon, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And if it doesn't work, you know, then we can sometimes use invoices if they're legitimate, like they're good invoices. Obviously, we, you know, oh, here's another one. I'll tell you also for appealing, why you should appeal yourself. Something our team does when we look people don't realize what we do at Seller Basics. $100 a month. Our team reviews submissions. We review your invoices. So the last thing you want to do is send an invoice that's going to get you flagged for Section 3 and ultimately kicked out of the program. Another reason why is just jumping in and saying, here are my invoices, like that can be dangerous. So like having somebody look at those things ahead of time, very important. But back to what I was saying before. So like counterfeit without a test buy, okay, you could potentially use your invoices. You can go to the brand, and then sometimes if it's egregious and the invoices are good, we can even bring it to Amazon's attention and say, hey, this brand is engaging in brand registry abuse. Okay. They have email, especially like if we have, and there's a strategy to communicating with the brand too. Sometimes like the way I like to communicate with a brand is I like to get them to say the things that I need them to say. So I don't go in there necessarily say, you need to retract this. I just kind of go in there trying to kind of get them to open up. What's this really about? And get them to say things like, you don't follow our MAP policy. You're not one of our authorized sellers. I'm like, thank you. Because if I can't get this appealed by Amazon, I'm just going to show them that you said this. Because that's 100% against Amazon policy. You're not supposed to be using brand registry for that purpose. Then you got counterfeit with a test buy. That you've got to be careful because that is instant death. You are done. If you get a counterfeit with a test buy complaint filed against you, your account gets shut down immediately. You have almost no recourse because Amazon has told me that even with invoices, they don't care if it's a receipt from the brand itself. They don't believe you. The receipts are not enough. The invoices are not enough to get over a counterfeit with a test buy. Amazon believes that company legitimately bought your product, inspected it for actual counterfeit. But some of these companies they hire these third parties and they'll say it's counterfeit because you're not following MAP, and they're just more. So it becomes more on us to help to help our clients through that, both by information gathering, because if I can get somebody to open up and say, you are not a MAP, you didn't follow MAP, you didn't do this, I can show Amazon clearly this counterfeit with a test buy is bogus because they're talking about MAP. They're not even talking about counterfeit. Why, so you can sort of use that stuff to your advantage when you do that. Now, if somebody files counterfeit against you, do you have a legal claim against them? Potentially. You could sue for defamation in some states. It's tricky. Maybe some, unfair, deceptive practices, right? But then there's this flip side of the argument that they could sue you or for these sort of trademark infringement claims, because outside of Amazon, resellers, we don't really know the extent of the first sale doctrine. We don't really know what it does or doesn't allow. And unfortunately, it's not trending in our favor, right? The first sale doctrine protects your right to sell products like used, right? So like if I have a brand new iPhone, right, brand new in the box, and I sell it on Amazon, I know I can't, but just theoretically, and I sell it as new, right? The argument is that's the trademark infringement. If I sold it under the used like new category, no trademark infringement because the customer's expectation is different, right? When you buy new on Amazon, because people don't understand the difference between sellers and non-sellers, it's just all Amazon and they see Prime, right? You're thinking it has the same warranties and goes to the same quality control as an actual product purchased from an authorized dealer. Whereas what these brands will say is because you didn't buy it from an authorized dealer, we're going to invalidate the warranty. We're not going to, we're going to say you don't have one. So thereby, if you're selling a product as new, but it doesn't have the same warranties as a new product, it becomes materially different. And materially different, therefore, if you're selling a materially different product as new, that's trademark infringement. That's where they're going. And that's where the court cases go. But as far as Amazon's concerned, none of that is relevant. They don't care. Amazon believes new is new, uses, so that's the dichotomy we're dealing with. Whereas Amazon policy is you can't use a brand registry tool to enforce, that type of trademark infringement. But yet the law is unclear when it comes to the first sale doctrine, right? You clearly have a right to sell that iPhone under the used category, but it's when you get into the new category, it's a problem. Now, there's a counter defense to that, which is called pretext, which is to say, okay, well, the whole reason why you're doing this with the quality control and the warranty is because you're just trying to control distribution. This is all pretext. You're just creating these bogus policies and warranty policies because you're just trying to control distribution. You don't really mean it, right? I guarantee you've never had nobody ever returns their product to you and claims warranty, or you've never denied a warranty claim to anybody based on where they bought it from. You're just saying this stuff to be because you're trying to establish this material difference for the purposes of hitting me with trademark infringement. So there's that counter argument. But again, like the courts, we haven't, we weren't like the OtterBox case wasn't great. That went in favor of OtterBox for reselling OtterBoxes out in Colorado. So it's like the law just is murky right now. So we are all living in the gray. It just creates this constant confusion and this constant battle back and forth, whether you're getting attacked via Amazon's brand registry tools or you're getting letters from certain law firms. That's just the environment we're in. So again, not something I would suggest people handle on their own. I know people like to throw away the letters. I don't think that's a good idea. But I just don't think it's something people should be, it's complicated. I mean, if you have a successful arbitrage business and you're making a lot of money, invest in support. Invest in having a team that can support you. Don't be that guy that just loses everything because you didn't know what you're doing. Because you wanted to save like a couple $100 or $1,000 or $2,000. I mean, just think about what's at stake and what it costs to get help. And you probably should choose help, And there are a lot of, non-lawyers out there that sell IP claim services, which just drives me insane. It's like, imagine you get hired, you get accused of murder. And you're in the jail and you call your mom and say, I need a lawyer. And in walks a murder consultant. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a murder consultant. No, you need to work. I'm not saying me. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers out there that do this stuff. I'm just saying like work, if it's an intellectual property related issue, it's a legal issue. Okay. If somebody's accusing you of counterfeit, it's a legal issue. Don't hire a counterfeit consultant. Hire a lawyer who knows the space, who knows what they're doing, who knows how the game is played, right? Who understands the risks. And get that help. But, IP claims as a whole, I worry most about brands that are filing counterfeit with a test buy recklessly because it's just the disruption. It's just pure destruction, right? It's like Armageddon. Counterfeit without a test buy, we have a pretty good track record of getting those retracted either through Amazon or through the brand, enough to where like nobody's losing I'm not seeing people selling day to day, losing their account over counterfeit without a test buy claims, in the aggregate. Maybe there's one or two we just can't get resolution on, but they fall off after 6, like the score is there, they're fine, right? But we fight, our thing is, and this is what drives me nuts with seller basics people, is like sometimes people will wait until their credit score, their seller score is down to like 100 or, like it's critical before they'll tell us about like their 20 IP claims. I'm like, dude, it's free. We work on, I forget how many at a time for free as part of your membership. I'm like, I would prefer just come to us with them. Like, just tell us so that we can work on at a normal pace as opposed to rushing to try to get Amazon to take down 20 IP claims at once. That's insanity. So, for those of you who get IP claims, don't just wait until if you feel like you're crossing the threshold where your score matters, start attacking them now. Like, just attack them early. Like, everyone, just get the help. Because it's they're, they when they add up, it can be a disaster. And when they add up and then something else happens, it compiles and the whole thing can come falling apart. Now you're like, I can't even address this issue until I address all the IP complaints that you've got. Like, it's just a mess. So, account health is account hygiene. That's what we, that's the system we've built at Seller Basics is like it's a hygiene concept. It's like, we don't want your emergency room patients. We want you to come to us for like regular teeth cleaning. Right. That's more the way we want to run this thing. So I don't know.
You mentioned, not throwing away those letters that you get. And so I want to dive down that because there's several different types. There are those emails you get through buyer seller messaging. There are those letters that you get to your home in the mail that are maybe from a brand, not from a law firm. Or maybe a service. I won't name any of the services. And then there are the letters that you get from a law firm. The one that everyone knows, of course, is Voorhees. Some of those are regular mail. Some of them are going to be certified mail. Is there a hierarchy of what to pay attention to, or do you need to pay attention to all of it?
Yeah. So I didn't mean to say you don't throw them away. I just I'm trying to understand is like, I mean, eventually when you're done with them, you got to throw them away, right? What else are you gonna do with it? No, I'm kidding. But it's and this comes out in how we respond to people who send us these letters. one, it's important to read them because they're not all the same. Sometimes they are like 90% of the time I see a Voorhees letter, it's the same. But every once in a while, it ain't the same. So you got to read it, because if it ain't like the other one. But what I find surprising, and I started doing this in Seller Basics, we started sending, when people send us letters for review, we say, look, here's our response. We have this sort of canned response. It's very thorough. And I'm going to go through it here in this podcast. And at the end, we say, if you still don't understand or you still have questions, just schedule a call and we'll sit down and talk to you about it. Okay. But the difference is we actually do read the letters before we send the response. I'm going all like off focus. Sorry. We do actually read the letters before sending them out, like forcing, just to make sure that this is, we're at the right realm of the process here. So, so when it comes to letters, first you have to read them because you got to know what you're dealing with. Like, it may just be your standard, like I was saying, material difference type letter, or it may be something more specific, right? And maybe there's something you do need to do. Like, we have evidence that this is actually counterfeit. Like, that's a concern, right? That's very different. There's one law firm, which I think does a really good job for the brand. I like the way they represent the brands. I think they do it right. Not that I'm on their side. I just say, like, as far as like, if I was a brand, I would probably like the way that law firm does it better than Voorhees. And that's because they do this like thing. They typically do this thing where they go like, first, we just want to validate the authenticity of your product. I love that, because when you don't respond to that, you've just opened the door for them to file an IP complaint against you, because they can say in good faith, hey, look, we just wanted to know where you got it from. And when you ignored, when you threw my letter away, we just assumed that you're not interested in. So we had it's a fair on us to say that we're concerned about counterfeit. I love that. But that's just about reading the lines, right? Like, reading between the lines. Like, that's what they're trying to say. Then the rest of it's all about the first sale doctrine, this, that, and the other. But that first and foremost, it's just kind of hidden. First and foremost, we just want to, verify, see where you got your products from. If you could send us your invoices or something, just to show that we know where you got it from, right? And that's cute, because then the brand is sort of insulated from brand registry abuse at that point, right? Because if you don't respond, you're like, oh, well, we did send them a letter and they didn't respond. So, it's a little bit more plausible. Whereas Voorhees doesn't file IP complaints just based on those letters. They just send the letters. That's actually, they know that's not, they only file IP complaints if there's actually a problem, like a branding mismatch. But as far as how it's delivered, this isn't a court hearing. You're not being served. You're not going to court. So whether they send it to you via certified mail, via buyer-seller messaging, I don't really know what the point of sending something buyer-seller messaging. Like, it's, I've seen a lot of fraud through. I just had a client the other day who was getting Prop 65 notices, the California environmental law compliance issue, through buyer-seller messaging, and then finally he got the letter. They sent him the letter, and it was from blatantly fake China-based law firm. They were just trying to, because they didn't know how Prop 65 worked. So you could tell this. They were threatening to have him deactivated for in breach. But that's not how Prop 65 works. You actually have to file with the Attorney General first, and it's like a whole thing. But they were threatening. The way they said, if you pay us now, we'll go away, which is illegal under Prop. You can't just go and ask somebody for money. You have to file a case with the Attorney General first to give the Attorney General a chance to intervene. So it's like, it's totally made up. But whether it comes certified mail, I mean, that's all designed to scare you, right? Like with Voorhees, like it's typically letter, email, letter, certified letter, and they might even draft a lawsuit. And even then, like, what percentage of Voorhees clients have actually gone to court? I would say, in my experience, the ones I've seen, very few, but some do. And this is where I get into explain to people why it's really important to consider these letters, not just throw them away, but understand that, like, one, every brand is different. Voorhees it's not that Voorhees does or doesn't sue. It's whether the brand likes to sue, right? If it's OtterBox, I would 100% run from anything OtterBox, because we know they sued and they won, right? So you should go and look and see, what brand are we talking about? Look on the internet. Has this brand sued other people for trademark infringement? Is this going on now? Did they just sue, did they sue 30 sellers last month for trademark infringement? So you kind of want to see what's going on with the specific brand that's bothering you. Two, understand the risk. This is what I've learned since we sort of pivoted our strategy and sort of just explain to people in a blurb exactly what the risks are. And once people see that laid out, their mind changes a little bit, because what they have to understand is, like, okay, people love to call me up and say, well, doesn't the first sale doctrine protect me? Does it matter? Does it actually matter if the first sale doctrine protects you? And this is what this is the difference between a law firm answer and a practical lawyer answer, right? If I was in a law school answer and a law firm answer, right? If I was in law school and I was teaching a class on intellectual property infringement, and I wrote a Voorhees type, one of those types of hypotheticals for an exam, I would expect a very thorough analysis of the first sale doctrine and who would win in court and and what are the. But in real life, when the cost of a courtroom hour is astronomical, and the cost to defend yourself in a lawsuit, let alone bring a counterclaim, you're talking 6 figures minimum to go through this process, right? It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It's who wants it more, right? So if a brand sues you because they think you're reselling their product unauthorized, and they're making up this whole case about you based on what the Voorhees letter says, all you want to do at that point, if you're the typical seller that I've met, is get out of that lawsuit as quickly as possible. And that's like a $5,000 to $15,000 problem, depending on your legal cost to your lawyer. If you have to go into federal court, like if you have to make an appearance in federal court, if you can resolve it beforehand, right? If the brand demands that you make a payment in exchange, for the legal fees, for the hassle of having to go to the point of suing you. So what I explain to people is like, look, it's your risk tolerance, right? There is these arguments of the first sale doctrine, and there's arguments that there's not. Who knows? Here's the thing. If you think this brand's going to sue you, or if the idea of being sued is so freaky to you that you'd rather just move on to another brand somewhere else, that's the decision you have to make. And so you just have to understand that risk. It's not the risk of, if you win in court, it's not like you're going to get, like, even if you took a brand sued you and you won the case, you're not going to get your money back. Like, you're not going to get attorney's fees. You're still out the hundreds of thousands of dollars you spent. So what have you done? You've proven in one court, in one case, that the first sale doctrine was superior to their arguments of material difference. Whoop-de-doo. You've done nothing. In the grand scheme of the big problem, you've just lost a ton of money, right? So knowing that court is only reserved for the rich and privileged few of this world, and that in the big corporations, that most of us, there really is no justice in our justice system. And that's something I think lawyers forget to tell their clients, is that court is narrowly not, it's almost a non-starter for most of us. When you know that, you have to think differently. You have to think about risk. What are the risks that you are going to get sued? If you do get sued, is it high likely, you hope it's likely you can get out for cheap, $10,000, $15,000, maybe you set up a rainy day fund. If you're one of those people who just can't even bear the thought of potentially being sued, like the chance of being sued, even if it was 1%, freaks you out, then maybe you just move on. But it's our job really just to explain those risks. How the letter gets to you is really irrelevant. It's just, what does the letter say? What is your risk tolerance? If you're a $10 million a year seller in arbitrage, I guarantee you they can handle the risk. There's a great lawyer in Brooklyn. You should have him on the show. His name is Mark Berkowitz, who defends a lot of these bigger Brooklyn sellers. That's who I send my clients because I don't want to litigate. We don't have bandwidth for heavy, but he could talk. He could tell you about his experience defending these Brooklyn sellers and other sellers who get hit with these Voorhees cases gone wrong, right? Or brands that have filed counterfeit complaints and he's had to sue them back, right? We've definitely, if a brand is really aggressive, sometimes we'll draft a lawsuit and try to leverage that so they think they're about to get sued to get them to come to the table and retract. But at the end of the day, going to court's a whole nother animal. Very few of our clients can afford it, right? Or even if they can, it's a substantial amount of money for them to do that. Some of his clients are, you're talking about the biggest sellers in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. You're talking about huge, these guys can afford to fight. So it's a different animal when you're that person than when you're like the typical arbitrage seller that we run into, right? Who could still be doing 10 million a year, but you're only making, right, on 10 million as an arbitrage seller, what, 1.5? I mean, that's great money, but like a lawsuit can drain you real fast. So yeah. For me, it's just the letter. It's not that you can't throw away the letter, but you need to read it. You need to understand it. What's it about? Who's involved? And you need to understand the risk that you're taking. Okay. And if you're comfortable taking that risk, and many are, fine. But what I have learned, like I said at the beginning, is there are a lot of people who thought they were comfortable with the risk because they used to throw the letter out every time. And then all of a sudden they get my response. They're like, oh, that's different than what I've been told. No, I'm not comfortable with that risk. I think I'm going to just move on. And that's it. So that's really the gist of where we are with the Voorhees type letters that we see. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox a little bit.
I won't tell people that I won the Powerball, but if I do, Paul, we're going all the way. We're going to court.
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Just on principle, just for
On
my personal
principle.
satisfaction.
Right. Like if we had if the Online Merchants Guild was successful in raising millions in dollars and there's another avenue. We could set up our we could make suing for, pushing back on brands and create like a little force field for sellers who are in trouble. That's another way you can do it to make the world safe. But at the individual level, the vast majority of sellers are not in a position to fight back. So you've got to take the risk, and then you've got to decide, like I said, if you get hit, hope to God you can get out quickly. Hope to God you can get out for under 10, 15 grand, hopefully maybe even $5,000. Hope to God that you're not somebody that they're suing because they want to make an example of you. That's another one that, that's the other risk we tell people is like, that's the best case scenario if you get sued. Worst case scenario is they want to make an example of you and they won't let you go. Now you're being forced to like either cede the case and just get a default judgment, or you're going to litigate to the end of the earth. But, those are all theoretical possibilities. But like I also say with lawyers, I try not to scare the crap out of people. I'm just saying, like, you got to consider it and understand your own risk tolerance, because there's something we lawyers are really good at. We're really good at figuring out what's possible, but we're not necessarily great at telling you what's probable because we don't have crystal balls. We don't know, right? I don't know what the brand is to be like, well, are they going to sue me or not? They sent me a draft lawsuit. I don't know. I don't know what the brand's thinking. I can look and see what I can find online. Have they sued before? Just because they haven't sued before, does that mean they won't sue you this time? I don't know. I don't know. It's impossible to know. It's like, so, but, statistically, at least I will say the majority of those letters, fortunately for now, historically speaking, do not lead to much. The majority of these letters go nowhere. But again, once you explain the risk to people, they get a little freaked out. Even if the odds are, who knows?
I think the great modern philosopher Mike Tyson summed it up when he said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
Punched in the face. Yeah, punched in the mouth. Yeah, I love that quote. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So you made a really interesting point about it not being Vory's actions; it's the brand's preferences towards action that you have to worry about. So along those lines, I wanted to know if you have any insights, or if you can tell us anything about what you believe determines ASIN restrictions and gatings, and why maybe some sellers face more than others.
That's a great question. I know it's complicated, and I know I have tried to get clarity on that. I have asked Amazon for clarity on it, and all I've gotten is it's complicated. Like the old Facebook post when, single, married, complicated. I think gating is a product, obviously is designed to be a product of, high counterfeit risk. So if you've established that, like, you're still at high risk of counterfeit, but like, who gets gated, right? Like who are the most gated companies? Are they $5 million brands? No, it's ASICs, right? Or whatever. It's Adidas. It's Apple, right? Now, those brands with high counterfeit risk, they're just operating at a different level than Amazon. They have a different. Amazon knows too that the liability is real, right? Because a retailer can be responsible, right? Just as you as sellers, right? Amazon's responsible. If somebody's selling, 1 million counterfeit Nike shoes, suddenly Amazon's on the hook for that. So where I see it coming from is, again, it goes back to imagine being an inside lawyer at Amazon and you're explaining the risk of allowing 100,000 people to resell Nikes on your platform, right? And, you want to make sure that Nike doesn't sue you. So and we also saw this with 3M during the pandemic whenever Amazon says they partner with somebody, it just means that if they don't do this, they're going to get sued by that. Like, in other words, the company has enough leverage to scare Amazon into cooperation, or else Amazon's going to get sued. At least that's how I see it, right? Textbooks. I don't know if you know, that group that was Caleb, what was his name? The group that does, like, they used to teach textbook resales, right? I mean, there's this law firm that has just, destroyed them, right? They have been filing lawsuits against textbook resellers, I would argue questionable counterfeit claims of books. A book will be battered and tatted and old. It'll be a different shade of blue because it was like 7 years old and out in the sun and bought at a college campus in Florida. and they'll claim that they bought it on Amazon. It's counterfeit. Amazon will immediately freeze that seller's funds and kick them off the platform sometimes, no judge, no jury. Like just because that's how the booksellers have gotten infiltrated Amazon with their influence. So sometimes the reason, in my opinion, I don't want to be conspiracy theorist here, but it's just knowing corporate world the way I know, it's just bigger than us. So if a corporation makes enough noise, like Apple, they're just going to get their way with Amazon, and Amazon's going to give it to them, and they have the influence to do it, right? They hire the lawyers, they hire the hired guns. Whereas, if you're a $5 million seller, you're not going to necessarily have an easy time getting Amazon to gate your products, right? Mm-hmm. Even though you're probably more likely to have just as much of a problem, because God knows people sell counterfeit. Small sellers will just hijack those listings with nonsense, but they just don't care. Now, as far as what gets you ungated, I don't think Amazon has a clue what's going on. I don't know. I don't know why some invoices work. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. I don't know. Target invoices used to work. You buy in Target and then you show it. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but what we saw over Christmas was we saw a lot of people getting ungated, and that was tragic because some of those people who were getting ungated were told they literally had a day to sell through their inventory, which they just restocked before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So they were just retroactively ungated. Now, some of those we found out were mistakes by Amazon, and they owned up to that. But then some people are still gated, and they're pissed off because they feel like they built a livelihood selling these certain products, and now they're gated. Now, I don't know how people get ungated, like aside from like certain invoices. I know there's ungating services. I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like that can come back to bite you. Those invoices,
I've always told people not to use ungating services. Seems too risky.
Exactly. And those invoices can be used against you. Like those invoices turn out to be shady, right? Those can be used against you in your identity or Section 3 interview. You know what I mean? And they can be used against you as like, okay, we don't trust you. And it goes back to like, so it's just harder now to get ungated. And it's just, so like, I don't think Arbitrage is dead. I do think it's harder to get into it though. Like, I think there's established people. And if you're not one of those established people, it's hard. And I think, yes, certain products are just not going to be as easy to sell as they used to be. Because Amazon's just not going to take the risk on it, right? But it's a big world with plenty of fish in the sea. It's just, unfortunately, some of the favorites that people love to sell may be harder to sell these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are 1.3 billion ASINs on the U.S. marketplace. It is and I know not all of those sell. We all know that, but a lot of them do. Right. I think a lot of Amazon sellers maybe have binge watched Lincoln Lawyer or something, and they've got these ideas of grandeur. And I mean, multiple times people have said, "Hey, have there ever been any successful class action lawsuits or these major legal wins against Amazon for seller grievances? And if not, do you think there is ever going to be a case for one or the ability to take one to them?"
No. There's one going on right now. People keep calling it a class action. It was an Amazon automation company. Mm-hmm. You familiar with that?
Yep.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of those cases. Those are crazy. Where people get charged like $40,000 just to open the Amazon account So what happened there was Amazon started pushing back against the companies, and they realized that I don't know where people like what I've noticed from people who fall for the arbitration. For the Amazon automation scams. A lot of them aren't from here. Like the dream of passive income. Let me tell you about passive income. It's real. You know where it comes from? The Internal Revenue Code, specifically real estate. Owning real estate can be passive income. Surely. You hire a property manager and you don't, and if you're a partner in a real estate investment trust partnership, you're literally doing nothing and collecting money, right? Getting dividends is passive income, right? Passive income exists in those formats. So it's funny to me because I see a lot of realtors getting roped into these passive. They think that owning an Amazon store is much like collecting dividends from a stock, because that's how it's sold to them, right? Like you just have to, we'll take care of everything. We just sit there and they sell this stuff and churn it, and you just collect your profits. Well, if they knew anything about Amazon policy, first of all, these companies take 20, 30% or whatever they take of the revenue. And you're thinking to yourself, having a vested interest in multiple Amazon accounts selling the exact same product. Gee, where have I heard that before? Is that like a multiple account violation? Yes, it is, right? Just because they don't directly own it, but they have, if their interest is in 30% of the profits of that company or 20% of the profits, it's as if actually there is a clause in the Amazon Seller Code of Conduct called non-circumvention, which is literally is meant for something like that, where you're creating dummy accounts to try to manipulate the buy box. So now there's 30 bytes at the buy box and you own 29 of them. Well, no shit, they got suspended. Pardon me. No wonder they got suspended, and no wonder Amazon's shutting this down. And these poor people who lost everything. So one of them is suing. They have like 500 accounts shut down, and they're calling it a class action. It's not a class action. It's they're claiming that they were a member of the Amazon Service Provider Network. And somehow it's their membership as a member of the service provider network that was breached, which also has an arbitration clause. So I don't know why Amazon's entertaining that case in court, but at any moment they could kick it to arbitration. But because of Amazon's arbitration clause, we're not going to have class actions. We're not going to have, because they're prohibited in the BSA, and we're not going to have any major legal wins. There was another Amazon group that got shut down for bundling. And their lawyers sued Amazon in open court. And based on what I can tell from the public record, like they got a resolution just by talking to the Amazon. Basically what they did was they got Amazon's lawyers' attention and then had a conversation and resolved it somehow, right? Like I don't want to get into details. I wasn't part of it. But the point being is they didn't win in court. Nobody won in court, right? There was another case in Indiana where they were trying to do the same thing. I don't know what the outcome is, but nobody's winning in court against Amazon right now, like not as a seller. As a consumer, you could see a class action, right? If there's a way to take like Amazon's actions as sellers and say, how does that affect the consumer? Then there might be a way to get there, right? Like you say, by not allowing us to sell Adidas, you're creating unfair, you're monopolizing the market. I'm not saying this is a real argument, but I'm just saying like, and therefore that caused the price of shoes to go up. I'm Joe Consumer, so I represent this class of people who pay too much for my shoes. Something like that, you could try to, what's the word? Segue, but you could try to jerry rig it into a consumer class. But as a seller class action, unless there is a major change in the Federal Arbitration Act, which is a law that pretty much says these arbitration clauses are rock solid, especially in B2B, right? Which even though we're small, we're still B2B, right? There's nothing. I don't see anything happening in the near future that's going to be groundbreaking in the legal system as far as Amazon taking an L from an Amazon seller. I could be wrong, but usually the L's happen in arbitration from what I've seen. Amazon does take some L's in arbitration. There have been some great cases where arbitrators have said the BSA is unconscionable, it's unfair, it's overly burdensome, it's overly one-sided. And lawyers have been successful getting wins for their clients, but those are done on an individual basis. Now there's a theory you could do, you have 500 Amazon sellers with the same issue. You could do like an Occam's razor approach of arbitration where you're just hitting where eventually Amazon will just, it's sort of like class arbitration where Amazon will just want to try to consolidate them and resolve them all at once. But there's nothing forcing Amazon to take a class action on at any point.
Interesting. I'm curious. I just had a thought. Could Amazon be entertaining this automation company's lawsuit in open court because maybe they want to show the FTC that they're pushing back against these companies, since the FTC is also
they've been
very hot and heavy on them?
Yes, the FTC has been hot and heavy on them, and they should be. I don't know. I think they do. I think probably because the amount of press that court case, because that case sort of implied that there was a class action going on. Maybe Amazon wanted to show, because if you read Amazon's motion to dismiss, it's pretty funny. Like they call them out for being just like basically a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon basically just calls them out for being a scam. So this is a scam company. They're promising passive income to people and all these things. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of reasons why Amazon wanted to do that in open court. Just say like, yeah, let's just show, a judge what these guys really are. Let's show the media, right? Because none of this would be public record, right? If it wasn't, you can read all the documents on the Southern District of Florida website. You can read all these, all the submissions, right? Just by using Pacer. But if it was an arbitration, none of that would be out in the public open. It would look like just 500 companies sued Amazon, and that's would be the story. So I think it also helps negate the news stories of the misreported news stories that Amazon was somehow involved in a class action, which, I think some of these gurus are writing about totally who are not lawyers and not understanding what that case was about. I remember reading that case and like all the comment about it on LinkedIn. I seeing comments about on LinkedIn, everyone's like, finally Amazon's getting what they did. I'm like, this is not the case, guys. I'm like, this is not the one. This is not the case. Like, this is like a Kevin David level or Katie. Yeah, I don't know if I can say that, but it's not him, but it's one of these level scam type situations. I'm like, this is not the one where we want to hang our hat and say, Amazon's out in the wrong here. I've met too many people who've been hurt by the automation. I had this one lady who was very sweet. It was in New Jersey, and they want to sue, and it's hard because you're like, man, a lot of these people have already probably blown their money on Lambos. Like, they're going to be hard. Like it's not just about winning the court case. It's about, can you collect? Can you actually get their money? Like, where is their money? In Florida, right? If you put all your money into a home and your primary residence, it's untouchable by creditors, except for the IRS and an actual home builders, the Florida homestead, right? So like, it's not just a matter of, so the problem with these class actions, when you get these guys and you got like 20 people who all lost like $100,000 each, you're like, well, that's a pretty big case. But like, well, where are you going to get the money from? Because the money doesn't grow on trees. You can't draw blood from a turnip. So even if you win, it's a moral victory. But as a lawyer who wants to work on a contingency because you don't want to charge these people any more money, and these people have no money, it's like, it's a hard case to take on because you're like, I don't know where I'm going to get them. Like, where do you recover from? Most of these kids are probably long gone. What's crazy is one of these automators is still out there on Facebook saying suspensions are down and still trying to pull people in whilst in court. It's crazy. So I've heard. It's nuts.
So it may be a foolish exercise to try to speculate on how it would come about, but just basically the entire history of capitalism says Amazon won't be in this position of power forever. So do you, and whenever that point comes, however we get there, do you foresee Amazon implementing better systems for sellers, specifically seller support and dispute resolution?
I don't know. I agree with you, though, by the way. I think about that day all the time. And I actually thought TikTok was going to be it. But now I'm thinking TikTok's probably going to go to Amazon. I think maybe Elon and Amazon team up. Elon takes over the social and Amazon takes over the commerce. But I have a pretty sneaking suspicion that Amazon is afraid of any other company getting TikTok. Because TikTok, to me, represented the biggest threat I've ever seen to Amazon, right? Since
outside, even more than Shein and Temu, because Temu just hit the monthly average user the same size as Amazon, I think.
Yeah, I think the loophole's going to close there. I don't know. I mean, you're probably right. I think TikTok probably is sort of like something that could fit on top of a Shein or a Temu, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you could just as easily be peddling Temu wares as you are TikTok wares. But the idea is that like the way it funnels traffic to a product is so different than Amazon. That sort of social shopping that is very popular in China. I don't know. I probably couldn't comment enough on Shein and Temu to know, but I just find that TikTok has how many eyes per day, and then suddenly you start. And the fact that TikTok was investing in a fulfillment by TikTok warehouses, like they were following the Amazon playbook of how to grow into a fulfillment company, just kind of had me thinking. And the fact that Amazon got worried about it until they partnered with them, I just made me think that could be their next threat. But now I think they'll get taken over. I don't know.
That's fascinating.
I think they might go. But to your point, yeah, I mean, if things start to decline, could you see Amazon? I don't know. I don't think much changes. Like, yeah, I think where Amazon could use improvement is definitely in their their seller support side. Like the way they withhold information, which they probably have a strategic reason for doing so, and that they don't want to tell you what's wrong because you should already know, because if they tell you, then you'll just say what they want to hear. Like, I kind of understand what they're combating with, but just, it's so bad. Their seller support is so freaking bad, right? Like, it's just like talking to a brick wall sometimes. Like, they're not even understanding what you're saying. I feel like that could hopefully just improve over time organically. Whether their loss of market share might, I mean, certainly in an attempt to try to to stop the losses, they could try to figure out how to make that better. I think they're going to want to do that anyway. But some of the stuff we're talking about when it comes to invoices and new policies in Section 3, I don't think that matters. I mean, that's a matter of legal compliance. That's just Amazon going from the marketplace that said, hey, we're just a flea market. We're not responsible for what's sold in our flea market, like they did in, when they first started the marketplace, to where they are today, where effectively they are as responsible for what they sell as a Target or a Walmart or any other physical store, Home Depot. And I think we're seeing the byproduct of that. So I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about it? It's an interesting question. I want to know what's your take on that?
It's tough to imagine. I came into it when Amazon didn't need to woo the third-party seller.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very strange question to consider. But I do see Walmart doing it. You see a lot of stuff. Their conferences and stuff, and they're rolling out the red carpet for third-party sellers, which is kind of, it kind of fertilizes the discontent, as things go wrong and things get wonky with Amazon. It just aids itself to the grass is greener concept of Walmart marketplace.
But it ain't. And that's see, and you're 100% right. Like, that's what I see. I mean, Walmart's definitely a little bit more benevolent
for now
than Amazon.
Right.
They're definitely nicer. They still have their issues, believe me. But here's the gist. Like, I don't know how many thousands of Amazon sellers I've met over my life who sell on all the platforms: Shopify, Amazon, Walmart, eBay, whatever, Poshmark. I mean, like, I probably couldn't even name one, because I don't know if I've met that person who's just like, Walmart is more than like 10, 20% of my sales. Like, the volume you do on Amazon is just so, like, I meet people who do Shopify, they're like 50-50 Shopify, Amazon, like they do really good at promoting their website. People who are like 90% Shopify because they're just good at promoting their own website and that's what they want to do. But like, rarely do I ever meet anyone who's like, Walmart's my jam. Like, I'm just like, that's where we're making the money, on Walmart. It's like, everyone I've met, it's just like, we could lose Walmart tomorrow and we wouldn't care. That's why they're wooing people. But it's kind of like too little too late. The time to do that was like, 20 years ago, when they didn't want to, or when I was there, probably back in 15 years ago, but they didn't think e-commerce was a threat back then. So they didn't do anything. So I don't know. So like, it goes to your point. It's like, does it work? Like, does being a little bit nicer make it better when you're on the way out, when you're on the, because, Walmart has a relevancy problem, I think, in the e-commerce marketplace space. I mean, they're relevant as a retailer. They're huge. But in the e-commerce space, they're kind of not as relevant. And if Amazon ever gets to a place where they're not as relevant, who is? I mean, I don't know. Do people care? Because I think people care about where they're getting their money from. Like, where's their traffic coming from? And if the traffic's just not coming from Amazon, I don't know if being a little bit nicer makes it better or not. But I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a good question.
I don't know if from your experience working in-house with these corporations, is it possible that a corporation just gets too big for a relationship like third-party sellers have with, the mothership to be smooth? Is it even possible, or can the is the parent just too big, too many moving parts to get that granular and actually have a smooth relationship between the two parties?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's like turning, it's like trying to get a corporation to be flexible is like trying to steer an iceberg. It's impossible, right? Some are better than others, but a legacy company like Walmart, more so than Amazon, it's like impossible, because again, there's politics. People don't. It's the politics. The politics just kill these companies, right? Like I was telling you before, part of the reason why Walmart didn't want to invest in e-commerce is because the CEOs of, I'll tell you another story. The CEOs of the stores, the retail stores, saw it as a threat, so they shut it down. Right? They didn't want it. Okay. When I was at Microsoft, the biggest thing out there was that started up was the iPhone. Right? Like, I literally started at Microsoft. It should have been a sign. I started Microsoft like literally the week the iPhone came out, And I remember seeing Steve Ballmer in an interview, and you can see this on YouTube, going, priced $500 with a subsidy? Talk to me when they sell 1 million phones, right? I like our strategy. And he was right. At that time, Windows Mobile was on like every phone that had a key, like other than BlackBerry, right? There was Windows Mobile, it was Windows Mobile, right? But over time, it's like, then this device comes out that's just unbelievable, like touchscreen. Who's doing touchscreen? Like they used to have touchscreens at Friendly's when you order ice cream, like when they would order your ice cream, at the deli. Like I never saw a touchscreen like that, right? And all the Microsoft people are like, all the developers are just like, who are tech nerds. They just love this thing, and they're being told they're not supposed to have one because it's like treasonous. But like it's the coolest technology ever. This is why Microsoft had such a leadership problem and during the Ballmer years, because it was just like, if you don't understand why your team. Meanwhile, what were we touting for touch? A Surface, not the Surface you see now. When I was there, do you remember when Pac-Man would be like, you could play Pac-Man at the bar and actually you would sit on both sides of it? Like it was a giant coffee table. Yeah. That was when I started Microsoft, the year Apple launched the iPhone, they were touting that, the Surface, which was the size of that Pac-Man thing. And they had it right in the middle of their visitor center. And you can play with it and like manipulate the map. Meanwhile, Apple's got this all on their phone. You can just do it like that. It was crazy. They had no vision. And part of the problem was because you learn later is that they were so afraid of mobile overtaking Windows computers and losing market share on Windows, right? So you get so obsessed with your cash cow and defending the cash cow that you lose sight of the future, right? And this happens all the time, right? And that's the politics, right? The politics is, doesn't have a keyboard. Who's going to want to use this thing? Let's not even invest. So by the time Microsoft came out with a phone was 2010? And it wasn't even multi-touch. So you couldn't even do like this stuff. It was like the biggest. And meanwhile, we're on iPhone 4, right? And I remember they had a big parade in campus with this tombstone saying "RIP iPhone." It was like the douchiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was there. I witnessed this. But it was like that's in-house corporate politics that you just cannot, till you see it, you don't understand it. Like it's so hard. So, with Amazon, there's probably so many hands in the marketplace. It's hard to, I don't even know if they fully have control over it sometimes. I don't think they do, and it's scary. Now, maybe with AI and agents, like they'll be able to regain control and things will change, but, it's just not uncommon for companies that just, the bigger you get, the harder it is. And that's why we have startups, because startups start without, and they don't have those restrictions. They don't have that rigidity. They don't have, 1,500 lawyers like GE had telling them what they can and can't do. They just go and throw everything at the wall, see what sticks. And when something works, but eventually, right, they'll get to that place where they're going to have that problem. Like Uber's going to have that problem, I'm sure. Like all these companies eventually get to that place where it's just, they can't be nimble. They just become static and rigid. So I don't know. That's my take.
I don't think any growing company ever doesn't have somebody in the break room going, it just doesn't feel like a family anymore.
Oh.
It's kind of how it goes. Before we get too far away from Microsoft, true or false, did you have a Microsoft Zune?
Yeah, I bought one, but I bought it on discount at the company store.
Awesome.
It was on clearance at the company store. I also have $5 copies of Windows Vista. Like they were giving away Vista at the Microsoft store when Windows 7 came out. So I bought like a couple. I think they're worth a ton because they're like unopened copy of Vista. That was like the worst thing ever. I even had a Windows 7. We threw a Windows 7 party the day. Like Microsoft had this thing where you could apply to have a Windows 7 party, and they would send you like all these like Windows 7 plates and napkins and what do you call those things? And so it was like right around my birthday. So we had my 30th birthday was also a Windows 7 party. So it was
that's great.
Yeah, but no, the Zune was it was blocky. I don't know. It was like for the price that I paid for it, it was like 60. I don't remember what I paid, but it was kind of cool. But I liked Xbox. Xbox was the coolest thing about Flight Simulator was my favorite. I used to work next door to the Flight Simulator guys. They were cool, and I learned a lot. I learned how to land an Airbus. Like I learned a lot. But then Microsoft fired them in 2009, and then hired a new Flight Simulator team like 20 years later. But that was sad. So
By the way, your Steve Ballmer impression, fantastic. Sounds just like him.
Nobody wants a phone without a keyboard. They don't want it. Business consumers don't want to use it. I don't know. Yeah.
So one thing that we always ask people is, and I know that, I mean, you read for a living essentially. So is there anything that you've read or listened to in the past month that wasn't some sort of amicus brief that has been helpful, impactful to you?
So not yes and no. I started something that I'm very fascinated about called The Coming Wave. It's a book. I do audiobooks because, like you said, I read. I can't do it. I just like to listen before I go to bed. Just put on 20, 30 minutes of audiobook or podcast. The Coming Wave. I'm obsessed with AI. I'm afraid of it. I have this theory that, like, kind of like the Matrix, like there's gonna be like two classes of people in the world in the future. There's gonna be the ruling class, which is anyone who owns a share of NVIDIA, and everyone else is gonna be just battery people, right? Where all the rest of us, we're just gonna be used for battery purposes, and we'll have a little, so it's like nothing new, nothing revolutionary, like just the Matrix, how the Matrix plays out in real life, is what it feels like. But no, I'm serious. I'm fascinated by AI and what is going on. I view it as an arms race. I don't think people fully, people talk about tech bubbles. You can't stop. Once you start down this road, which we've done, you can't stop. Like, look what China just did today. It disrupted it, that people worried about with their chatbot that supposedly, doesn't need $20 billion to write a haiku. Great. But, we're talking about language models. I mean, what about military, medical? Like this, like the whole world is going to change at a level. Like, to me, AI is fire. It's the wheel. It's so much more like fundamental, or has the potential to be, right? That I'm just like, I'm fascinated, but I'm also scared because, like, I'm trying to figure out how do we survive as a world? Like, what's going to happen, right? Like, are we the last generation that's going to have the opportunity to make money? Like, is our entire lineage, the future, going to be dependent on what we do today? Because after that, we're all going to be paid basic income because there's nothing to do. I don't know. I mean, these are just crazy. I know it sounds like a whack job, but I don't actually believe these things. I'm just saying, like, it's just fun. Like, my mind just gets really racy with imaginations of like what could be because of this AI thing that we're witnessing. And so this book, which I actually saw Bill Gates was also recommending it. That's not how I found it, but The Coming Wave is like an ex-Googler and just kind of really trying to break down. I'm still in the middle of it, so I can't say it's great, but I like what I've read what I've heard so far. It's just helps ground you into what's going on. But crazy times.
Yeah. People ask me why I mind my P's and Q's with ChatGPT. I tell people when AI gets bodies and they're in robots, like, I would prefer to be a pet rather than a battery. Like, they can keep me around and, that's fine.
Just get one share of NVIDIA. They're on sale today. At least because you'll be in 25, 30 years, you'll be part of the ruling class that way. That'll be the only people there are. It's really fascinating what's going on. And I love ChatGPT. I have conversations with ChatGPT at a level. Like, I almost want to start a blog of my conversations with ChatGPT because it's so cool. Like, it's fascinating and trying to trick ChatGPT, trying to break it. It's just like, it's so fun. And so fascinating, so scary. And the glitches, I mean, that scares me too. The way it glitches still, like, like, you'll be like, dude, I tried to play Wordle with ChatGPT a couple times, and it was just like, I'm like, do you know how to play Wordle? Like, it was just glitching. It was just glitching like crazy. And I'm like, and I would tell what to do, and it would be like, no, it still just doesn't listen. Like, it's weird, and it's lazy. The laziness is fascinating. I don't know if that's built in because of the cost concerns, but like, try to get it to do anything that's more than like 3/4 of a page, and it's like, it'll just try to get out of it as quickly as, it just tries to not want to do it as much as possible. It's really, but that's just language models. I mean, what the future holds, like you said, they're going to be like, what is a human being going to be needed for in the future if they can do everything? I don't know. Scary. Maybe it's not scary. It's interesting. So definitely check out the coming wave. You can buy it with 1 credit on Audible.
Yep, I'll be picking that up now. Tell us where people can go to learn about Seller Basics, to sign up for a Seller Basics account, all that good stuff.
Okay, so you can go to sellerbasics.com to sign up for a Seller Basics account. It's $100 a month. There's no contract. So, but the idea is, it's like I said, it's like we designed it to be like health insurance for your e-commerce company. So with that, you can set up free calls with their network of lawyers, of which I'm one of them. I'm also the founder of Seller Basics. But I do have a separate law firm, ecom.law, or ecom attorneys, which if you need more complex legal issues. But the beauty of Seller Basics is that if anything happens to your Amazon account, your ASIN, our well qualified and staffed account health team will help you through it. And the key to working in our company is you have to have a heart, and our team has real heart. They do care. That's something that I think Joy, who leads the account compliance, it may be to her fault that she cares so much, but she does. And so it's a great program. It's $100 a month. But again, the bad thing has to happen while you're a member, because it's like insurance, works like insurance. So don't be suspended and expect $90 a month. No, there's a pre-fee, because we have to keep it separate. So, and if you have other legal issues, or like trademark infringement, or you want to sue your competitors in China, or you want to sell your business, I have a law firm, ecomattorneys.com. Check it out. But definitely, Seller Basics to me, it's like we were actually thinking about raising the price. And I'm just like, you know what? No, it's been the same price since we started it back around COVID time. And it works. It just works. I like it. $99 a month. And honestly, people who use it a lot, like if you have a business and you're 20 accounts and you're doing 30, we might charge you more than $99 if you start you start filing more cases. We might say, hey, you're a power user. So we look at it on a case by case basis, but probably like 5 people I probably could think of that actually we've ever done, and they understand because they are huge, right? But the average seller, we take your IP claims, we'll take your ASIN suspensions, whatever you got. And the other thing I love about Seller Basics as an account health service, and this is I think what inspired it in many ways to go this route, is like when you go to other like a la carte consultants, who do the suspension stuff, like you'd say, oh, I'm suspended, I don't have any money, this happened. They always have to like pretend to be sad about it, but in reality, that's how they make money. They're stoked, right? They want sales to go up. I love the fact that our program is designed to be on your side. Like, we don't want you to get suspended. Like, it's better for us if you are a member and do not get suspended, but we're there to help you if you are. And we go to war. We do everything we can in our power. There's no upcharges. Anything we can do within the Amazon ecosystem that makes sense, we do it. We don't charge extra. There's no hidden like, oh, well, there's a, escalate this to this team fee. No, it's just $100 a month. And you also get free, 15, 20-minute calls with the lawyers. So that way, if something happens, you get a scary letter in the mail, or you just have a legal question, you want to know about LLCs versus S Corps, or, whatever, you can set up those calls. Those are complimentary. So that's it. So check out sellerbasics.com. And if you have any questions, you can contact me, paul@ecom.law for my law firm, or paul@sellerbasics.com if you were trying to reach, I wear the 2 hats. So when I'm working on the Seller Basics stuff. So thank you guys so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got a good one. Enjoy. That was a great pick to lead your team.
Unbelievable. I value it. You have no idea. You should have her on too, because she'll if you want to get into the weeds and the technical of suspension, like you'll never meet him, but she's been a godsend. She really helped turn the program around and execute the vision of how I wanted the program to be. Because for me, it's like most important thing is I want people to be happy. My reputation is worth more than any amount of money. I don't care about the money. I care about people think of me, because you can't get that. It's hard to re-earn that reputation. So, when it first started, I don't think I liked where it was trending. I wasn't really that involved on the day-to-day of it, because I wasn't the suspension guy. But I love where it is today. And I love that there are people there who like Joy. Everybody on the team has a heart and does care. and she has that institutional knowledge, and she's always learning, and that's the best part. She's always growing, and yes, we are just so lucky that she leads that team, and so fortunate. So I appreciate you acknowledging that too. That's awesome. She'll love that. But thank you guys.
Absolutely. We always finish up with a quote of the week, and this one's a little bit unusual compared to what we normally do. This one is, you don't drown by falling in the water, you drown by staying there. This is by Edwin Lewis Cole. And I chose this quote because you brought up the people who have 20 IP complaints and then wonder, well, why did I get suspended? Why this next thing really falling on my head? And also the people who are suspended, who are going through it. It's kind of a reminder that sometimes you're going to go through it. You're going to go through a rough time. And I see too many of those people. They just get stuck. They stop in their tracks rather than trying to get themselves out. And you've got to do something rather than just lay there and drown. So anyway, that is the pod, guys. Thanks again, Paul. Appreciate you hanging out with us, man.
Love the quote. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.